No, I think
Good.
I think we're good.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, then we will just roll right into it. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Third Hour of Power. This is Grady of This Mormon Life, and this week we are talking about Chapter 17 from the Howard W. Hunter Manual, which is Preserve and Protect the Family. And this week I'm joined with Liz of I'mAFitMormon.com. Liz, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me so much. This is fun.
We're excited. And this lesson is a powerhouse. I mean, this is an amazing
Mhm.
lesson. We are not going to probably touch on 50% of the content in there. So even though you should be listening and get some things out of this, my first recommendation when you're done is go and read the rest of it because it's a wonderful lesson. Um, Liz, I'll let you start out this week. What were some of the things that stood out to you from the lesson?
Well, I think that it was the last section. I think it was section 5 was the main thing, and I think it's because it's applicable to my life right now. Most of it, I mean, everything is, but this definitely hit me. And so it was, our homes should be holy places where the principles of the gospel can be lived and where the spirit of the Lord can dwell. And with everything that's going on in the world, I just have found that I want to make my home such a refuge. So when we go out into the world, it can be scary, right? And there's so much going on, but to be able to have my kids have a place and my husband have a place. I mean, he's deployed overseas for years at a time, and to have a place that we can all be, to feel the peace and to feel the spirit is so important to me, and I think everybody else. And I think the thing that excites me about this section is I think this is what a lot of people want and are looking for, and it's such a good missionary tool to be able to tell people, like, we have something, we have a way that we can help people feel the spirit, right, and bring their families together and be able to have a refuge and an opportunity to kind of escape from the world and all the troubles that are always happening. So
Yeah, and you bring up a great point of just the spirit.
mhm.
It's not just about good family practices and good habits and we're all really nice to each other. It's the spirit. You
Yeah.
come into a home where there's a family living the gospel and it feels different because there's
Mhm.
peace, not only just in relationship wise, but there's the peace of Jesus Christ that comes. And I think it's such a big thing. That's one of our things too is that life can be hard sometimes
Mhm.
and the home should always be a place that no matter what kind of turmoil either you or your spouse or your children are going through, they should be able to come home and be themselves and not feel
Mhm.
judged, not feel concerned about what anyone else thinks, but just know that this is a place that they can go to and feel love. There was a blog post I did a while back that I'm just kind of thinking of is it was a picture over the fireplace above the mantle. And typically, you'll see like a family picture of,
Mhm.
everyone on the beach in white shirts and jeans with no shoes on.
Right.
Um, I'm from Southern California, so that was the standard. And this family had a picture of the woman taken in adultery kneeling before the Savior. And I just thought that is a weird picture to have as your mantelpiece picture.
Yeah.
And as I thought and I pondered on it, and I thought about it, and we were there for ward choir, and so the women were doing their section, so I just got to sit and think. And I just thought, I think it's such a great message to the children of the home is that no matter what happens, if you go out of these four walls and you get into trouble and you do
Mhm.
things that you know that you shouldn't, there's a overriding message here that you can come home and you can feel love and you can feel the forgiveness of loving parents just as you can feel the forgiveness of your Savior. That no matter what you've done, you can come home and you can talk to your parents and that they will
Mhm.
not condemn you.
Right.
And they talk about that a little bit. We're kind of going backwards here. In section 4, it talks
Yeah.
about advice when you have wayward children that do depart from the right way. And I like here it talks about this. It says that don't give up hope on a boy or a girl who has strayed. Many who have appeared to be completely lost have returned. We must be prayerful and, if possible, let our children know of our love and concern. My brother listens, my brother Glenn, and I love him a lot. He's my big brother, and he has been on a journey in his life. And I'm so glad because right now his journey is that he's taken his family to the temple. They were sealed a couple of years ago. And I would say 10 years ago, that's something that we would have never imagined for him. And I think a lot of it has to do with my dad and his continual love and prayer and patience for my brother.
I think I talk a lot with my fans about my past and my parents. My parents were incredible people, really brought us up the way I hope that I can bring my kids up. And but it was such a dark contrast between me. We had 7 kids, but between me and my brother that was about 18 months younger than me. And my heart is a believer, right? Like I just know God. Like I just can feel the Spirit. Like that's more of a gift.
Yeah, a spiritual gift to be able to feel the Spirit.
But my brother obviously didn't have that, and he strayed. And I taught, you know, he ended up committing suicide, and that was like 20 years ago. But the solid thing that I know is my parents did what was right. They loved him. They did everything they could to help him. And so, you know, there's always that. I know a lot of parents, I have teenagers, and the struggle is real, right? And it is
Hashtag.
Exactly. But it's so prevalent. And I think sometimes, you know, I always thought, well, I mean, I'm just going to do it right, you know, and then I'm going to, like, I felt more like I was going to control my kids, and they weren't going to. But when agencies, you know, when people start to have agency and start to be able to make their own choices, there's different choices. But I think that solid, my mom was a really good example of that. She was solid with her love. Like she always said, you know, I'm going to do what I believe Jesus would do, and I'm just going to do my best. Right. And I'm going to continue to love. And I think that that's the awesome thing in the lesson, that's what it's talking about, that you can keep your faith and just keep doing what's right, and knowing, you know, in the eternities, even if it's not here on earth, in the eternities, like knowing that you can answer and you did what was right. So,
yeah. And although it happens where even in a family where the parents did everything, quote unquote, right, children are going to make their choices. But that doesn't mean that we don't have influence and we don't have the ability to raise our children in a way that will diminish or minimize the risk.
Yep.
And I think it's so essential that as parents that we talk with our spouse and we decide what kind of home we're going to have, set standards to say what's going to be important to us as a family so that we can lead and help our kids to know, you know, the right way to go.
Absolutely. And, you know, and that takes, I think, to go to the very first that the family unit. I think I kind of take this for granted. My husband and we got married 19, you know, and so we've been married for a lot of years, and we started having babies like right after. So my son he was born, I don't know, a year, 12 months after, 11 months after, or whatever, we got married. And so he's grown up with us. Our 2 teenagers pretty much grew up with us, but we found very early that our little cell of a family was not going to bloom if we didn't work together as a team. Like it could have been destroyed many times. That little seed of a family could have been crushed by the world so many times. And I look at the world today and think that cell has been starting to erode and crushed so much that then we start to see the impact on communities, you know, and the world by not appreciating and taking care of that small cell of a family. You know, sometimes we think, you know, what's one small family in like a huge, you know, but every family unit matters. Every family unit has been assigned and matters. So,
and we think about, you know, you go back 70 years back into the 50s. That's so weird to say, like 70 years into the 50s. is that society was meant and existed in a way that supported families. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you lived a traditional family life and you loved your kids and your mom and dad were together and that was the norm and that was great. And and now there's so much pulling away, and even just ideas of you know there are popular studies about people saying that monogamy isn't what we're supposed to be living in our lives. I'm like, well, how crazy is this that there's people that are thinking I'm having trouble having a good family, and here are popular theories about all these things about how if I'm having a hard time with my wife I should go get a different one. And
Right.
as long as I pay my child support I'm a good dad. And all these things, I just think it must be so hard for people that don't have the gospel to know what to do. And I think it's so important for us to be able to do that. And I think I like one of the sections in that section. I think it's section 2. Section 2, it talks about parents, and it says that your first obligation is to get your own spiritual life in order through
Mm-hmm.
regular scriptural study and daily prayer. Secure and honor your priesthood and temple covenants. Encourage your family to do the same. And I think it's so important for us is that it isn't so much about us dictating to the other family members what their responsibilities
Mm-hmm.
are. I'm doing a good job because I'm telling you what to do. The most important thing for us to do a good job is to do
Mm-hmm.
everything that is going to bring us closer to the Spirit.
And I love it's that right there is an amazing, it's like an invitation, right? So if we um, haven't necessarily been doing that, it's an invitation that we can do better, right? And if we have been doing the check the box, right? So we're reading our scriptures because we know we're supposed to be reading our scriptures, right? And we're like showing up, to family evening and making sure we have our root beer floats, right? Like every Monday, we're gonna play games and have our root beer floats because we're gonna make sure that we're checking the box and making sure it's done. But this lesson, it talks about taking it a step further. It actually invites us to say, what for? Like why do we have to do that? And it's because it matters, right? Like reading your scriptures and bettering yourself and actually applying those things that we learn matters.
Yeah, and being able to be close to the Spirit, because
Mm-hmm.
when you're children, and now my oldest is 11, and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
very fortunate. I haven't had any big hitters yet. But especially with teenage children, I would imagine they come to you with some very difficult questions,
Oh, yeah.
and you need to be close to the Spirit to know the best way to address that issue.
It's so I have a 18-year-old and a 17-year-old, and then I have a break where they're 11 and 9. The world is so different than I guess I thought when I was a parent. I'm pretty young parent, so I thought when my kids were in high school, it would be a lot like when I was in high school. When I would be like, "Oh, I can totally help you." Like, wasn't that long ago. The world is so different. The world is so different. And so when they're coming with these things, I'm thinking, well, I never saw that. I've never saw that. I never had that happen to me. I never would have thought that would happen to me back then.
Yeah,
Especially
especially
given
at
like
those
social
age
media
groups, even
and
if
all
it's
those
something you
things
think might
crazy.
come up, you're thinking, well, yeah, but not yet. Like we realized is that one of the things that we do is we have the sex talk with our kids at 8 years old. And when I say sex talk, I mean we have the bigger discussion. The discussion continues on,
Right.
but this is where we have it's me and my wife in the room with our child who's just turned 8. All right, here's how it all works,
Yeah.
because we know that in a year and maybe even at 8,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to be talking and trying to have their own ideas of what that relationship is and what intimacy is. And if he learns it there, it's going to be a lot harder for us as parents to try and correct that.
Right. Yep. And I think that that's why it's so with being able to have that. We have in our family, it's more because we had kids so young, we're a team more than mom, dad, kids. So it's like we're team Tennyson. This is how we roll. Dad leaves for a year at a time, and so mom takes on a lot of extra roles. Kids take on a lot of extra roles. We live a very different life when he has to be gone. And but we're that family cell that works as a team. And so a lot of times we talk to our kids about how as a team we can cultivate a good environment. As a team we can cultivate, so we're working together instead of, because as parents, it says this in the lesson, it's our responsibility to make sure that that is taking place, right? It has to take place, and it's our responsibility. But I think, especially with teenagers, giving them an option to be a part of it and help grow and help create that environment, helping them see that may not be cultivating an environment when they're bickering and fighting, and letting them be a part of creating the home space. I mean, they're not far off from when I started having, their age is not far off from when I got married and started having kids. And so to be able to model that and give kids an opportunity to be stretched and invite them to also see what that's like and be a part of it.
Yeah,
it's me just, telling them exactly how it's supposed to be. So
yeah, mom and dad are dictating to you what the rules are.
Right.
It talks about in the lesson about family councils. I think that's along that same line. And I loved Elder Ballard's talk. We talked all about family councils and the types of family councils that there are and the benefits of having children engaged in the decision-making process to say, here's a problem our family is having. Dad's overseas. How are we going to handle it? There's lots of fighting going on. How can we have a more harmonious home? Having everyone engaged in the process of decision making gets everyone involved in owning the solution, but also they feel like I matter and I have the ability to make decisions. There was a family council that we had when I think I was like 8 years old or 7 years old, some young age. But I remember we were going through this list of new family rules. And it was Dad's list, and one of those rules was no MTV. Now, this is back when MTV was a music television channel that played music. It wasn't nearly as racy as it is today, but this was Dad's rule, and no one bought in. And so basically what was happening, I hope, Dad, if you're listening, this is what happened while you were at work, is that we would watch MTV with Mom and whoever was there, and we loved it. And we would, we were dancing the Tone Loc and Young MC, watching new MTV raps. And as soon as we heard my dad's truck had this low rumbles, like a 1978 Chevy Silverado, and wah, 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 like, everybody turn the channel, Dad's home. And everyone puts the couch cushions back where they belong, and turning off the stereo that was hooked up to the TV. And, we turn it to whatever was, it was usually like headline news was like the next channel down. Like, oh yeah, Dad, we're watching headline news. And, it didn't work. He had very good intentions. I mean, I would never let my kids watch MTV, especially now. But because it wasn't a family decision, we didn't have buy-in. And because we didn't have buy-in, we didn't abide by it. Even Mom didn't abide by it. And she fully supported us in our craziness. And so how important it is that not only Mom and Dad, but even the children are engaged in that decision-making process really helps have harmony in the home.
Yeah. No, definitely. I want to find this. So I want to talk about really fast. It says, in seeking after the welfare of individuals and families, it is important to remember that the basic unit of the church is the family. And so, it's so important. Like I read that and I thought, I mean, this is where testimonies are supposed to be solid, right? Like that, like it's not necessarily at church and in Sunday school that testimony is supposed to be cultivated. Like it's supposed to be added to, and it's supposed to be, a supplemental opportunity for them to have that experience. But the home is, where a lot of that stuff is supposed to be cultivated and created and started. It goes back to that responsibility of parents too. If I'm not cultivating an opportunity for them to learn and feel the Spirit, then, that's a big responsibility for me that I need to take full ownership of, but
Yeah.
creating, when I read it, I just thought, sometimes, especially with youth programs, I was a young women's president for a couple years in Japan. And some of those girls, I just remember young women's was where their testimony was being built, right? Like that was like Sundays and Wednesday nights, like that's when they were learning about Jesus, and that's when they were feeling the Spirit, and then they would go home and have a different experience. And so how important it is that we can give that to our kids, and it strengthens the church when we can do that. Like it strengthens if we have really good members that are being able to cultivate environments outside the church to feel the Spirit and get answers to prayers and personal revelation. Like that is such a big thing for our church as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's so essential. That was kind of our thing too as parents, is that we wanted the teachings at church to supplement what we were teaching in the home, and to help them build on those foundational blocks that we're building in the home. Right now, I'm the advisor in the deacons quorum, and my young men, I've got I think 12 of them now. We had a bunch of birthdays. I can't remember. We've lost some, gained some, so I can't remember where we're at. But I can tell the boys who are learning the gospel in the home, and I can tell the boys who aren't. And I'm so grateful for the boys who are, because they are such a great assistance to those other boys to help them study and learn the gospel better. And I like that it talks about in the lesson that families in the church today consist of husbands and wives without children, parents with children, and single individuals living alone. Each of these families must receive priesthood watch care.
Yep, I love that.
Every family situation is different. Is that even with President Hunter, he was in a part member family growing up. His father was a member of the church. And so maybe in that home situation, they weren't learning the gospel, and how good it was to have a situation where he could learn the gospel. And then for all you elders quorum presidents, make sure you share this part here. It says that caring and committed home teachers are needed in each home. None should be neglected, especially in your situation where you have a husband deployed. How important it is for you to have home teachers that are there to watch over and protect your family while your husband's away.
Yeah. And it's really hard. We move a lot. So we're only places like a year and a half, 2 years. So it's hard sometimes for members that kind of have the idea. A lot of times we're in a military ward. And so there's so many, we're transient, right? There's so many people coming in and going. And so it's hard to kind of have that connection that we maybe had in Utah, right? When I was growing up, everybody knew each other, everybody knew about each other's lives. And so being able to know for the elders quorum that to make sure people are assigned. But I think the one thing I've learned with home teaching is to make sure they know that I need help. They know that I want support. They know that I'm very self-reliant. It's really hard for me to ask for help. I mean, I am good with my husband leaving, and I'm good when he's home. But making sure that I say, I would like that support, right? I would like that extra support. And knowing that the church is set up in a way that it's built in.
Yeah.
It's already built in, that I already know, no matter what's going on in my family and others as well, like everybody in the church, there's already a system set up that if your family unit is not necessarily, ideal, I don't think anybody's family unit is ideal, actually. Like, the more and more I study people, the more and more I know that everybody has dysfunction, right? And to know that there's a built-in system for support that can, add to our experience inside our home. So,
yeah, and we won't have time to go into as much as I would love to, because I think the section itself is a whole entire lesson. But for you priesthood leaders, read section 2, and you women as well. But it's pointed right at men of the priesthood, and it's talking about, to be a priesthood man, what it takes. And it's this self-reflection checklist of things that you're doing. And one of the ones I think is one of my favorites is that it says that you should regularly you should express regularly to your wife and children your reverence and respect for her. Indeed, one of the greatest things a father can do for his children is to love their mother. Whenever there is disharmony in our home, my children know that there are basically two rules that will
Mhm.
get dad angry.
Uh-huh.
The first one is disrespect for his wife. And I make sure I say that very directly. I don't say their mother. I say my wife.
Right.
The
That's
second
awesome.
thing is disrespecting my children. And not your brothers and sisters. It's not about your brothers and sisters. It's that they are my children. And I take ownership in their protection. And so
I
my
love
children
that.
know if they talk back to mom, that they're going to have stern words with dad. They're going to go outside on the porch and they're going to have a conversation. I don't care if it's 120 degrees outside. We're going to talk about this because I don't tolerate it. But at the same time, I need to make sure that I'm doing my part to let my wife know how important she is to me, and that I'm doing the things that she feels loved and respected,
Yeah.
as well. And as my children see that and they know that their mother feels that, they will respect it as well. Liz, is there any last things that you wanted to add to this lesson?
No, I just the last thing is just I love this lesson because it is another call to action. Like it's just one of those lessons that it gives us that invitation to do better. That no matter where we're at, it gives us like really good instruction of what we can do better. We can do, go through and see where we can be invited to make progress, where it's inviting us to actually take action, maybe in places that we haven't before. So that I loved this lesson. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, and I am a firm believer that you should be going to church and coming away with it with things you want to do better. It's one thing to have a nice, uplifting lesson. It's another thing to have a transformative lesson that changes who you are and helps you change what you want to do. And so, even if if you had this lesson or you're in an auxiliary where you don't participate in the third hour lessons, take some time with this and take time with it with your family. Have a family council about
Mm-hmm.
these things and decide what you want to do as a family to help improve these things. Well, Liz, tell me a little bit about what you have going on with I'm a Fit Mormon.
So I'm a Fit Mormon. We're just it's an organization I created to help people be fit for good. So physically, we talk a lot about physical health. I'm a personal trainer and holistic health coach, but also with the mind and the spirit. I think I found that years ago, I was always doing church and then world, and I couldn't figure out how they fit together, right? And so the word of wisdom helps collide a lot of that together. But I really couldn't figure out how, I had weight to lose back then. So I, was in the middle of losing weight when I kind of had my epiphany and figured out there's so much about the body that can be respected. Like there's so much. And so that's what I teach about. I teach about this is the one thing in heaven that we raised our hand and we said, I want that. I want a body. And then we get down here and we live with this body and we think about all the things that it does to inhibit us, right? And so finding
And all the
that
things that we
balance.
do to inhibit our bodies.
Totally. And then we can't understand, like, why is it not working with us, right? And it's really that we're making the choices to inhibit it. And so that's kind of what we do. We teach. We have some really great programs for families, for women, for kids that goes along with, some really great stuff in getting kids prepared for missions and things like that. So it's really a fun job. We've had, I don't know, thousands of people go through our programs. And so it's really exciting stuff.
Yeah, I did a paper that I wrote in school, and it was just about how being physically fit helps us to serve better in the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got room to improve. I wasn't say room to grow, but I don't have any. I'm grown enough. I have room to improve. And I was at Mutual last night, and I was watching our bishop, who is in good shape, and
Uh-huh.
he was out there. We were doing slip and slide kickball, where the baseline is a slip and slide and each base is a pool. And he was out there running, sliding the bases, jumping over kids. And I'm just like, you know what? Because he's in such great shape, able to get more meaningful engagement with our youth.
Yep.
Whereas me, when I did my lap around the laps, you know, I was just like, someone get me out. I'm so tired. And I just think, you know what? We can, when we're in better shape, when we're healthy and we have the energy, we can serve better in the kingdom. And so I love that you're trying to marry those two together. And I think that, you know, those, if you feel like I want to do more and serve more, but I'm so tired, you know, go check out imafitmormon.com and find out more ways that you can have more energy to serve in the kingdom and do more to be engaged.
Yeah. And find us on if you subscribe to our events on our Facebook page. In January, we just got a book deal with Cedar Fort that it's going to be called Fit for Good. Dr. Tenney already wrote the first edition. And so I'm traveling this fall doing that tour, talking to people, doing seminars and things like that. Some fun get-togethers. So make sure you go to the Facebook page and subscribe to the events, because that's where all the info will be. So
perfect. And we'll put a link to that in our show notes for this episode, so you guys can have multiple ways to find it and get engaged with that. And also, if you listen to this episode, if you had ideas or if you've done things as a result of this episode or this lesson, we want to hear about it. We want to know what you've done to get a better family relationship as a result of this lesson in the Howard W. Hunter Manual. Tell us about it. You can tweet at me at thismormonlife.com. You can also stop by our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/thismormonlife, as well as stop by the blog. It's this-mormonlife.com. And if you enjoy getting more out of the third hour of church, you should listen to our sister podcast that's done by This Week in Mormons called Sunday School Bonanza, where they do the same format as us, but they talk about the Book of Mormon lessons and the gospel doctrine. Do more to get more out of Sunday. We really appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you, Liz, for joining me today. And for all of you listening, we wish you all a fond adieu.